Welcome to the Time In Podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 34 of the Time In Podcast. This is going to be a different one this week because what we're doing is we're doing an episode on how to podcast. Obviously, myself and Craig this week are not the best choice of people to listen to if you want to start a podcast, but here we are. We're going to do various parts. This is going to be part one, where we skim through everything and explain to everyone the minimum you need to start a podcast, and you can listen to this 30-minute, 40-minute episode and you should know everything. We're going to follow it up with like part 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, talking about the equipment, the software, hosting platforms, how to get it out there, how to build a brand and increase your profile as a podcast. Firstly, Craig, I believe I'm right in saying that the first thing you would need is an idea for content around which you will base your podcast.
Yeah, I think the idea is really important, and it needs to be that you all are agreed on what it is you are wanting to work towards. So it needs to be a mutual idea of this. We tried to find out who we were going to be and why we were doing it. I think that comes with a bit of time, but if you have a general understanding of this is what we want to do because of A, B, and C, I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, and I think what we found was we recorded episode 1 3 times, which was largely down to equipment and software issues. However, we got maybe 5 episodes into the podcast before we really realised, okay, this is how we're going to do it, this is what we need to change, and we sort of had feedback we gave each other each time, which we still do to an extent. And I think the best thing you can do is just record something. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter if it's the same episode you record 4 times and you keep revising it, it's worth doing because it completely changes the way you think about it when you're listening to it through your own headphones. So, basics, what you need, Craig. The way we started it was we had to have an idea of what the podcast will be about. Ours is the Time In Podcast, so we speak about things that people have put time into, largely interviews with people who are experts in their field. We talk about games, movies, sports that we do, things that we are capable of speaking about to a certain extent, I would say.
Yeah.
As a rule, if you can think of 5 episodes about a subject, that's probably a good place to start. If you can think of 5-hour-long episodes roughly, you've got enough content to get going.
I think it's important to pick things that you're comfortable with as well, that you do really know about. So we've done a lot of episodes rambling just nonsense at times, which is fine. But if you can come up with something that you's all kind of come together. So for example, ours was obviously Xbox, playing Destiny. For a long time it looked like we might become a Destiny podcast, but we started with general questions and then a lot of gaming stuff early on, and I think that gives you a bit of confidence in the early stages. Go for something you really know first of all.
And the reason we say 5 episodes just to get going as well is that the quality difference in the first 5 episodes of any podcast you listen to is night and day. Honestly, It is wild. Use us as an example. So the motivation for starting a podcast shouldn't be money, because it's very unlikely that you're going to make a lot of money from it. It's not going to be a primary source of income for a long time. That might sound pessimistic, but hear me out. You want to do it because you enjoy it, because it's a good side project to have, because you're learning stuff as you do it, you're hanging out with your friends, because that's easy to keep going. If you're doing it for monetary purposes, don't bother. So, a fun one is equipment. Our first episode was recorded with me on a laptop using an Xbox headset. Craig, what were you using?
I was using a Xbox headset as well, but it was the thing. I think it's when the vibrating controller can move something within the headset, and then you get that really bad echo. So I had this really bad echo, so I had to put all these filters on and effects to try hide that echo, because it was so bad.
It was bad the first time.
It was so bad.
And Bundy was on his phone, believe it or not. So, to get started, all you need is something to record audio It can be a phone. You can use just headphones. We now all use USB microphones, which we'll talk about in the equipment episode. Eventually, we got USB mics that were about £25, and we've been using them up. Well, I was using it up until last week, and it's done absolutely fine. And a laptop or phone on which to record it. That is the minimum that you need. Any kind of recording device. The quality, that can come with time. There's no rush for that, and it would amaze you just with settings how good you can get your audio with whatever recording device you already have. Let's talk a bit about software. We haven't really had to pay for software. There's nothing essential that we've had to pay for. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I've recently bought some video editing software, but that was my own personal choice because it saves me a bit of time. I think with the stuff that we're going to get into,
A part-time porn star right there.
that's it. But I think there is the opportunity to buy software. There always is. Generally, all that tends to do is make things quicker for you. So if you want to take time, there's certainly some more basics that you can use. So, for example, Ewan with sound editing, Audacity was one of the big firsts for you, yeah?
Yep.
In regards to, well, to be honest, we've done a lot in Audacity. Other software, we used OBS for a little bit, and then we moved into Streamlabs. But now we've set it up, and this is only this week, that we have a stream set up, which is all fine. And now what we've done is we've got an OBS set up separate from Streamlabs, and that's just for recording videos. And if you want to do videos as well as streaming, etc., which we'll get into, it's very good to separate them. So with the recent content we've started putting on YouTube, you'll actually notice a little bit of drops in regards to the video quality, image quality, etc. That's because I've done it through a streaming setup. So hopefully with this episode, touch wood, there should be a difference in quality. So that's one of the for that. If you're kind of wanting to do the whole package, I don't want to jump the gun here, but try separate it. So try have video software for recording videos offline, and then use something like Streamlabs for doing streaming. I think the other thing as well is that pick what's pretty straightforward. Streamlabs literally holds your hand. And anybody could work it. And if you just want something basic to start off with, it is a really good one. I don't know if you want to touch on Audacity too much.
Well, I mean, Craig deals more with the video side of things, entirely with the video side of things, to be honest. I deal with the sound element of it, and so what I would use is OBS, just standard form, and you can record audio without any video. It records it as a blank MP4 file, but when you drag it and drop it into Audacity, it just changes it to a pure audio file, dumps the video section. So OBS can record audio very easily, very well. That's what we've used from the start. The editing software, Audacity, you can learn how to use it in about 15 minutes. When we get into the software, we'll explain the different effects and things we do in our editing process. We'll maybe put up a little clip of it. It's very simple. Honestly, if I can learn it, anyone can. And that makes it very easy to export an MP3, to create clips and stuff, and then take that out of Audacity as the finished product. The only other thing I would say that we use, and we've used many of them, is if your podcast isn't just you on your own and you're speaking with people, you need to find a program that lets you speak with other people, and you will then record from that.
Yeah.
We're using Google Hangouts at the moment, partly due to my equipment limitations, but Discord seems to be about the best if you want to include a video element.
See, the thing is, with Google Hangouts, it uses the least amount of bandwidth. So we tried a few different platforms, and we were getting really bad noise catches. So the first one was Facebook Messenger. We used that for a long time. And then the guys done the episode with Pod Wars, and Pod Wars were like, look, if you use Google Hangouts, it uses next to no bandwidth. If you look, for example, the CPU usage of when you use Discord, it's really high. It is really, I think it is the highest out of any of that sort of software. The only one I'm not too familiar with is Zoom, but Teams, Hangouts, Messenger, it's all far less than Discord, because Discord's got so many other elements going on in the background. But if you're at a starting setup where you've got a laptop, not a big gaming PC, anything like that, Hangouts is a great shout, and for if you don't have the best internet as well, like Ewan was dealing with for a long period of time, it's a really good alternative because because it uses so little usage. It's just a case of it'll get you through. The quality in regards to if you record video, which we'll touch on in a wee bit, will be a bit less. But like I said, it's doable for the starting point.
Yeah. So all the software we have just mentioned is free, absolutely free. You can download it, you can jump on YouTube, find a tutorial, and you can pretty much learn everything you need to do to podcast in a day, less than a day. So with that being said, we've said you need a recording device, whether that be a phone, a laptop, a computer. You can use headphones, you can use a USB mic if you have one, you can just use a built-in mic, you can use a built-in webcam to a laptop, which I'm having to use at the moment. You can use what Craig has, which is a separate USB webcam. If you have a great Canon camera, you can use that as well, all the same. When it comes to software, if you do want to use something to edit, you will need a laptop or a computer. So like we've said, if you're using OBS, which I think you can get on your phone, if you're using Audacity, if you're using the likes of Hangouts and stuff, it's probably a bit easier on a computer. What Craig mentioned about the video side of it, and it's something that's getting more popular, is people stream podcasts. Now, I'm going to let Craig explain this because I'm a bit of a stranger to it, but what we've explained would let you do more on like Spotify, iTunes, potentially YouTube, but Craig's got to explain how you would do this on Twitch or if you were doing it live on YouTube, for example.
So just before I jump into that, the whole scenario of this works very differently. So when we started time in, it was during lockdown, as of a lot of streamers, etc. There's been a lot of that came from lockdown. We were never together. So you need to understand if you're going to do a podcast either on your own or with other people, that'll completely change how you stream, how you record. For example, if you can, depending on when you're watching this, hopefully COVID isn't a thing, you could sit down, have one setup, one good microphone, easy peasy. One of the things if we could do that every week. But one thing I would say is that if you can't do that, if you can't go to that extent, one thing that we've not done until fairly recently, if you're recording with numerous people, get everybody to record their audio, not only for the ability to separate the audio easier, but also to have a backup, because you wouldn't believe the amount of times that we've had issues. We've had to extract audio from videos, etc., which isn't ideal. But
for every episode that we've published, there's one recorded somewhere with a wrong effect, or recorded wrong, or not recorded at all. There's been that many accidents and fuck ups and disasters, but hey ho.
But in regards to streaming, it's really simple. So if you wanted to stream the podcast, you would have usually the person with the best setup. When I say the best setup, the most computer capabilities, because what I'm about to describe takes quite a lot of CPU usage, and you need to have decent internet. Because what you would do is you would set up a video call. So say you're doing it with yourself and one other, you would do that video call. Now you can't double project a web camera. Don't ask me why, but you can't do it. You wouldn't put your webcam on in the video call, but what you would do is you would get the person you're doing the podcast with to put their camera on, and then what you would do is you would window capture their camera through OBS or Streamlabs. Have that set up, have the audio come through your speakers, that through, and then you would go live with your webcam settings, etc., like you would do streaming if it's yourself. And then what that does is that gives you the whole discussion, and you're actually streaming a conversation, not just an individual playing a game, for example. That's it in really simple terms. Really simple terms. It's very hard to do on a limited setup, but what you can do is you can obviously lower the content of your stream, etc. And if you're not looking to reuse that usage, it's fine if you want to go on sort of that lower end.
Yeah, and if you are looking for a PC setup which is capable of all this, including streaming and playing games, check out episode 33.
Hey, plug.
There you go. It's an iterative process, isn't it?
But don't buy it for curries. Fuck curries. We'll not go down that.
Asking since the last episode, the PC that I've ordered has been delayed significantly by almost 2 months, and so I'm having to make changes to it to make sure I get it quicker. But I'll not speak about it or I'll cry again. Now, once you have a podcast recorded and you have it in a suitable format ready to put out to the world, this is where it gets tricky. You need a platform on which you can put your content out there. Now, you've got, as we mentioned, you can do it live on Twitch or YouTube. You can upload the video to YouTube. I believe you can even create accounts with Spotify and upload them once you're verified. However, a much better option if you're new to this is what we have done. So you'll get, if you're in the US, you've got services such as Anchor, which let you publish your episodes for free and they'll distribute it to various platforms. If you're in the US and you stay in the US, you can actually make money from ads in that episode from doing a plug for Anchor. So it's very easy to monetize to a lesser extent, I would say. With us, who are UK based, obviously, we use Podbean. Now, Podbean is a service you need to pay for. I believe it was about £100 for a year, Craig.
I think it was £90 for the year.
90. So 3 of us, £30 each. We thought this is worth it. So what we do is when I get the audio for the episode all cleaned up, sorted, edited, chopped up, finished, I then upload this to Podbean. It distributes it to a variety of platforms, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, YouTube if we want, but we're doing that separately now. You can do it to, there's loads.
Apple Podcast.
Apple Podcast. Was it Deezer?
There's loads. Literally,
Addict, everywhere.
It's like,
and Podbean itself is an app you can use to listen to podcasts.
Yeah, we use Podbean as sort of our website, is what we say to people, and we kind of advertise it that way because it's the home of everything. What Podbean does is, though, for someone that's in the really early stages, which is probably, if you're watching this video, is probably where you're at, because we are not the people who speak to if you're at a later stage. But it gives the ability for you to upload your episode, create a description, etc., have it all set up, and then that uploads it everywhere. So if you're at that stage, you just want to get your content out there, that's fine. Longer term, Podbean is great, but if you want to start doing, for example, YouTube, there's not much point just putting audio onto YouTube. You really need to be doing some
YouTube separately. I agree with that.
So
which is what we're doing.
Yeah, so we've just recently, the last few weeks, we've started to move away from that side. It's the same with other platforms if you wanted to tweak it slightly, but Spotify, Apple Podcast, all these sort of things, they all use just audio. So this is a service that's going to upload all that for you, the exact same descriptions, tags, etc. And it's all done with one upload, which is so useful. I know you think £90, that's a big investment, especially if you're doing a podcast on your own, but the time and hassle that it saves you it's worth the money.
And so what myself and Bundy mainly I would say have found useful is with our jobs we use a lot of stats and graphs and stuff. There's a great analytics section of Podbean. This isn't sponsored and it isn't an ad, by the way. There's a great analytics tab, so you can not only see how many people have listened, downloaded, you can see what app they used, you can see when they listened, you can see where in the world they were when they listened, you can see the exact time, so you can determine the best time each week to release an episode. You can determine where your audience is in the world if you want to target things more towards a certain audience. I don't believe it gives us age group, but I think if you listen on Podbean you can get stats on that as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can.
So it'll give you analytics on most things, but it's not the most accurate. So for example, our YouTube views, we could get 60 views on a video, 100 views on a video, but when we go back onto Podbean, it hasn't captured all of those. Spotify, I think those numbers are a bit wrong as well. You would have to log into Spotify separately, but it gives you a general trend and you can tell which episodes are most popular. Relative stats, I would say.
It's like going back to that idea, as we call it, the Time in Podcast website for us, because it doesn't only upload, it completely gathers all data from, like what Ewan's just said. It is the hub of everything. Mm-hmm. So it's just such a good tool to use in regards to, like you said, looking at scheduling times, who your audience are, what platforms are maybe doing the best for you, so maybe invest a bit of time into that. Maybe platforms that aren't doing so much, which, for example, with us, YouTube was just there, but we didn't really utilise it. Now we are. I would never say it's our main platform, but it's certainly going to be one of the ones we spend most time on. Not yet. When we start doing stupid videos and all that sort of thing, and not doing the easy game of tier lists, it might change. But
B-tier content.
B-tier content, but yeah.
So the next stage, we would say, is once you've got your podcast, it's out there and it's in the world and it's accessible by people, is how to grow. This is an absolutely agonising one, as it completely depends on what your content is, who you are, who you're targeted, and how you progress. I think one thing you should do is create a plan for that short term or long term. What we do is we try and map out 25 episodes at a time. We take our views at the start or listens, and we say what we would like them to be at the end. We say what things we would like to achieve in that time. If there's a certain episode we want to do, if there's a certain type of guest we want on, if there's numbers we want to hit, or if it's a qualitative change. So, for example, our sound quality was hideous at the start.
It was horrendous.
And a lot of proof between episodes 1 and 5. We agreed by 25 we want the quality to go from here to here, and it did. But now we're saying at episode 30, I think we said we would like to take that next jump up, but that means a bit more investment in equipment, which we can speak about in the equipment episode when we do it. Now, this is the part where we got a really lucky break. Craig is a branding genius, partly due to his job. So
well,
when it came
my old job.
True. When it came to branding, we had Craig who was able to step in and say, here's how you do it. And so there's an element of social media coming into it. There's an element of how you portray yourself as professional and your page as professional. And we'll talk about sponsorships and stuff and affiliation when we get into this episode, which will largely be Craig talking, I would imagine.
We'll take turns, because the way we set it up, which I really like, is that we've all got sections that we are but I say experts in our terms, but
relative to each other.
yeah, we can all do bits here and there. But the good thing is, like, for example, when we do, for example, audio edit and things like that, that's going to be heavily you, and the same branding and stuff's going to be me. So we'll take turns depending on who has the best understanding of it.
And for what it's worth, if anybody's wondering what Bundy does, he is sort of a creative genius when it comes to, if you're thinking we've done a really iffy topic, he can come up with a title like that, or he'll come up with a sort of train of thought where everyone will go this way, Bundy will go this way. Is quite handy having a bit of a creative mind in there as well.
Yeah, I think the big thing with branding, people try to get hooked up, me included. This is what we are at the very early stages. That'll come later. So, for example, Time In, right? The name, we had the name before we actually had a meaning, a brand to it, and it naturally became, we want to interview people. So then we interviewed people, then ended up, you're getting experience from people who've put time into something, and then you made the connection. So don't get hooked up too much being, this is what we are. A lot of that's going to come down the line. It comes quite quick, actually. A couple of episodes, then you'll start to...
That's a good stretch to work out, right, here's how it's going to go. Because I think until you actually hear yourself back, or you say, Alexa, play the Time In podcast,
it's quite a scary experience. Yeah.
So when it comes to your brand, making small improvements is something we said, setting goals, and that'll naturally let you progress onto the next stage. Whether that be you want a sponsorship by episode 25, you want the quality to be twice as clear, you don't want any sound catches, you want 150 listens per episode, that sort of thing will come. A tricky thing is, I would say, branching out. So when we started, we didn't actually have YouTube to begin with. That was something that came about episode 5.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So as Craig said, we only uploaded the audio with a picture of our logo in the background, whereas now we're adding content, if you can call our faces content. However, I think the goal is you want to try and progress as much as possible without having to buy the top tier equipment.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to go out and spend hundreds of pounds on a microphone or hundreds of pounds on a camera and stuff. Now, collaborations, this is something that's quite vital to our podcast, because the whole concept is when you're at the pub, when you used to be able to go to the pub, speaking to someone and you'll talk about their job or a hobby they do. We all agreed that's sometimes one of the best bits of a night out, really interesting, learning about what people do. So having a podcast around that made sense. We picked a horrible time for it because we can't interview anyone in person. But thanks to technology, we can interview people about different things. And what we have found is that it's quite good talking to other podcasts because they are experts in their relative fields, or not necessarily podcast musicians, podcasts, fitness gurus, models, bakers, people with hobbies. For example, comic books. There you go, there's another one. Or we spoke to Alex about nostalgia. So that's just a concept with someone who has a lot of nostalgic memories and shares the same ones that we do, thankfully.
Yeah,
So
I think.
if you can, reach out to others and get them involved.
Yeah, I think. Me personally, I don't see how you could do a podcast on your own. I would find it near impossible. If you want to run your own podcast, that's fine. But certainly bring people in around you. It doesn't have to be someone that's a massive streamer or anything like that. Just pick people. So, for example, you've got a friend who's really into, like Ewan said, bacon. Ask them if they want to come on and just have a chat. You know what I mean? Just if you don't know what your podcast fully is going to be focused on at that point, just try different things and see what kind of fits. You're not gonna go, right, I'm gonna be a cooking podcast. You're not gonna be able to do that from point A. Try all different things, get different sort of people on. Bring people on as well who haven't got any experience being in front of a microphone as well, because it challenges yourself. So one of the things that hopefully people will notice in the early episodes are interview techniques are questionable in early episodes, but because we've brought so many different people on with so many different levels of experience in regards to creating content, being interviewed, etc., challenges us to be better at sort of questioning people and kind of gathering that information. Like some episodes you can tell, and I'm not going to shout anyone because we appreciate everyone that's came on. Some people did struggle a little bit. I think the streamer features that we've done is a big example of that as well, where people who have really struggled to kind of interact, and again it really challenges you to become an interviewer, say.
I think the tricky thing with the streamer feature was that was a 15-minute segment. If you listen to episodes with guests, sometimes it takes 15 minutes to settle into it and then get going,
that's true,
which is fine. And it's people that don't know us personally, they don't know the humour, they don't know how far they can push the boundary. They should know that there isn't a line. You can just go above and beyond with us, which is fine. But yeah, so we'd encourage reaching out and collabing with others. I don't think we haven't had a bad guest, and I think our guest episodes have consistently been better than the rest.
Yeah.
So it's always worth doing. On that note, if anyone's coming out with a podcast or that you're just starting and you think it would be good to get some views, let us know. Give us an email. Happy to collab. Can talk about your podcast and ours. That's what we're about.
Is this where I have to put an edit in and go that way? There's the email right here.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Have we got social media? We've got all our socials there. Get messages on Instagram, Twitter, whatever. You'll get us. Social media is something that is like we spoke about. It's more about creating your brand, how to promote, but that's how you can collab with others and find more like-minded people. Definitely worth doing.
Yeah.
Any quick tips before you go, Craig? Because I've got one that's sticking in my head, and it's something that we try and do, but we're really bad at. Get ahead. Try and get a few weeks ahead. So, for example, if we're recording on Monday the 1st, we don't want that to release on Monday the 7th. We want it to release on, I don't know, Monday the 21st. We want it to be a few weeks ahead, just in case we can't record a week, something goes wrong, we haven't got an episode a week. It saves that last minute panicky, try to cram it all into a week. Get yourself ahead. That would be my main tip for
it. One of the changes we made recently, so we used to record on a Friday, and then the episode would go out on the Monday. Do it at the start of the week if you can, because, for example, if you record your episode and you don't re-release that to the next Monday, that gives you a whole week of, like, not only time to edit, but in case anything goes wrong as well. Really good to give you that leeway. That's one of the things I would say. The other thing I would say as well, if you're doing it with more than one person, which is probably most likely, make sure everyone's recording the content again in case something goes wrong, because I kid you not, there's nothing worse than when things go wrong. For example, in our side, the Destiny DLC episode we done, how many times did we record that?
4.
I thought it was actually more than that. I ended up having to do it on my phone, which is another story, but
I think I had 2 accidents and then 2 tech issues.
Yeah, I think if you if you can get everyone to kind of record content and stuff, it just backs you up. The other thing I would say is that it's quite daunting at first, even with people who are computer savvy. Both you and I are quite computer savvy with the work we do. Split it up. So say if it's yourself and one other, or it's a group of 3, 4, divvy it up. So say, oh, I'm quite good with video, right? Go and play about with video. Or I do a lot of social media with my work. So for example, the guys were like, right, go and do the social media. You know what I mean? Divvy it up, and like we said earlier in the episode, become masters in each section. When I say masters, obviously not to that level, but within your own means. And it just makes life much easier, because a lot of the time what we do is we'll be showing each other how we're doing a process, and that's why we thought that's why we'll do this, because even if you go onto YouTube and whatnot, very little podcasts say how to podcast. It's a really good mentality. Like I said, this is basics. This is for someone stepping in, maybe picking up some little tips here and there, and like we said, we'll break it down easier. So we'll do. It's probably going to be about half an hour, isn't it? Depending on what criteria we look at.
Half hour mark now. Half hour, 40 minutes. We reckoned it would be.
Yeah, we haven't decided whether we alternate weeks when we do podcast episodes to how to podcast. But what we'll probably do is within YouTube, as an example, we'll do a separate playlist, and it'll be episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of how to podcast, whatever. And then
what I did think is this one makes a pretty good podcast. The others that maybe deep dive because we want to show equipment and software, it's probably okay as an audio file, but if you go onto YouTube, you'll actually be able to see all the stuff that we're including.
Yeah, we'll try to do some window capture and physically show you. What we might do is as well, I could physically, for example, edit a video, or Ewan could show you a bit of audio and record that capture. We could voice over it.
Yep.
Rather than do it
Explain
live.
what you're doing when you edit.
Yeah, but what we thought is this is an example makes a good episode for the podcast, because we're kind of generalising, giving some quick topics, but then we're obviously going to do a subsection from this and break it down. Not, I don't want to say more techie, but a bit more in depth to how to physically do it, rather than just say, yeah, use OBS or use Streamlabs if you're streaming, or use Audacity if you're going to edit. Like, that means nothing unless you've physically seen it or done it yourself.
Yeah. I mean, we did find it was bizarre that we all listen to podcasts. If you want to learn how to podcast, we couldn't find an obvious podcast out there that done it. So if we thought we do a quick series on it, it's out there, people can find it. A quick other point that Craig touched on. If you have people who specialise in audio, someone who specialises in video, someone who specialises in social media, try and learn it all so that if someone is away a week and there is a disaster, everyone can do everything. Because we've had a few scenarios where it's went a bit iffy.
Just a few.
Maybe a strange thing that I don't think we mentioned at the start. We didn't tell any family or friends we were doing this, because I've seen a few people start a podcast and they put it out there and they post all over their social media saying, come and listen to this, I've made a podcast. And so you're sort of getting people listening because they're your friends, not because they like it. So the stats don't really give you feedback.
Yeah.
We thought if we just put it out there, only really strangers that are listening, it's honest feedback that we're getting, and the numbers we're getting are genuine. We could post this to all our friends and family, and the numbers would shoot through the roof, but it wouldn't really reflect the content. They'll probably just tell us it's good or tell us it's shite for a laugh. But, it would be good to put it out there, see how it does, get honest reviews back, improve the quality, then tell your friends and family if you want.
Yeah, I think
that's a good order of doing it.
Definitely, and the factor is as well, you work out what platform or whatnot, like we said earlier, that you want to spend most time on. So for example, we invested a lot of time into Twitch, which is a great platform for gaming, and if you're a woman with your tits out, well, let's not go down that rabbit hole. And Ewan's probably pissed off that I've mentioned that. But
it's not untrue, it's just I didn't think you were going to say it, but go on.
But the factor is that we built a little community there, but the likelihood of that then leading to people listening to the podcast, watching us play Fall Guys or Minecraft or whatever, that's fine, you're bringing a viewership, but is it creating that viewership to your podcast? You need to look at that. And then one of the other things as well, I'll keep very, very simple, is that we are quite different in regards to most podcasts, like I said, have a genre or a niche that they build up to. So whether it be baking podcast, a gaming podcast, a TV series, Pod Wars with Star Wars as an example. People know what they're getting into to that, and they'll have usually consistent numbers because that's people looking for that content. If you're like us and maybe want to do something a bit different, our content, for example, a lot of it can be gaming because of our background, but we'll have, like the examples you said, one week we'll have a baker. We might bring in people who are interested in cooking. Next week we might be talking about boxing. We bring in that community. So it's quite difficult sometimes to look at your viewership from that point of view. Because you, for example, if you look on our YouTube channel, two episodes that stand out. One is the Elder Scrolls franchise, done really well.
Yeah.
Very, very popular on YouTube. Lots of speculation about Elder Scrolls 6, so there's a lot of traction from that. And then the other one's because we used OnlyFans in the title.
Dragons and tits. What can we say?
Well, if you want both, look at me. But that needs to be pinned. But
that's the ultimate combo. Wow. Okay.
But don't get too hooked up in the viewership. You work out. But Ewan's quite right in what he's saying, that if you want to make the decision to keep it private for a while and then build it up, it's a bit better to present to someone. Don't be like me and jump the gun. I'm very much like, let's do this, let's do that, do this. Gradually build it and then present it to someone. Definitely agree that's a better option.
Okay, thanks for tuning in this week. We're going to wrap it up there. It's been a bit of a different episode. It's actually been probably quite useful and informative, which other than last week isn't really like us. We'll of course have all our socials in the description so you can find us, send us any questions you have. If you want a collab, let us know. Look out for the next few episodes of How to Podcast Part 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll deep dive into, as we said, equipment, software, how to promote that sort of thing. And we'll include all the links for those individual things in the description. So we'll give you options if there's stuff you want to buy, if there's software you want to download. And we should have some clips showing you exactly how to use it. Because those will probably take a bit longer to edit, don't think they'll be out next week, maybe in the next few weeks anyway.
Yeah, like this isn't going to take away from the podcast. This is just a one-off episode, kind of giving a bit of a generalisation, but what we're going to do is a separate sub-series. So don't worry if you're more interested in the podcast, guest, etc. That's not going anywhere. It's just that we want to do this because we feel as though it's beneficial for people because, like we said, it's something that you don't see. It'd be nice to give back a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. Cheers.
Cheers. So one of the most important things when you're recording video podcasting, making sure your background isn't distracting and your lighting's correct. Wouldn't you agree, Ewan?
Yes, agreed.
For anyone not watching on YouTube, Ewan has currently got a rave on with a lightsaber.